All right, greetings, computer science enthusiasts. And today we're going to tackle a couple of more problems from 3.8. We're going to finish out the problem where you change the background by clicking on a sprite, and the other problem where you actually have more sprites appear as you click on a sprite. So this is probably going to be a little bit more difficult for the students because they have to look up stuff and apply stuff that we haven't really covered in class, mainly using conditionals. So hopefully they'll be able to do that. If not, that's probably a struggle. You guys might have struggled with these as well. So let's just get right down to it. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to start by showing you how to code problem number 4. So in problem number 4, what we were supposed to do is we were supposed to basically create our own sprite, and then we were supposed to change the background between that sprite. So if you go up here on this side up here on the screen, you see we have code and we have animation. I'm going to go into the animation tab, and I'm going to add a new animation. Now, when you click this plus sign right here, you get all sorts of different options to add your animation to. I'm going to choose the upload image option, and I'm going to insert an image of computer science pioneer for education and also Lord of the Internet, Dr. Jeff Gray. And so I'm going to go ahead and just put his image right in here. And now let's just see if we can write some code to make his image just show up on the screen. That's where we're going to start. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into sprites, and I'm going to throw in this variable. And sprite is going to equal a create sprite at 200, 200. So that goes ahead and sets where the location of that sprite will be. And then I'm going to set the animation of that sprite to be the same. I got to put in here quotes, the same title as what I've got here. So I'm going to just go back here, and I'm just going to copy and paste that. I did a Control C to copy. I go back here. I do a Control V to paste it in. And that way I'm sure I get the exact title exactly right. And then finally, all we need to do to make that visible, because by default, the animations are visible, all we need to do is just slap in draw sprites. And so when I hit run, I have a picture of Dr. Gray appear right there on the screen. So what we need to do now is we need to set it up to where when I click on this picture, the background toggles to a different color. So if you remember from an earlier lesson, we're going to have to do an if statement inside our draw. And probably we're going to use an if else, because if something occurs, then I want the background to be red. Otherwise, I want it to be white. So basically, if the background's white, I want it to change to red. And if the background is red, I want to change it to white. A better way of saying that is, if the background is not red, I want it to change to red. And if the background is red, I want it to change to white. So how can we code that up? Well, the first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take care of the nature of, if I click it, I don't want it to double click. I don't want multiple clicks to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and create a variable called t, and I'm going to set t equal to -1. Okay, this was done in another video, so they should be able to go back and reference a different video and say, oh yeah, when we were clicking, we needed to make sure that the click only recorded once. But when we were doing the count clicks problem, we only wanted it to count for one click. So to do that, we've got to set up some timing stuff. All right, so the next thing is they should be able to go back and see, I'm going to take an if statement. So ifs are in control, and I'll take this big old if statement, and after I draw the sprites, I want to start asking some questions. And the first question I want to ask is, and once again, this can be looked at and duplicated from a previous lab. We wanted to have the compound conditional if the mouse pressed for the sprite and if the t was not equal to world.seconds. So I'm going to go in here and in world and say mouse pressed over for my sprite. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to say, okay, I've got to have this not equal situation occur. T does not equal world.seconds. All right, and so that sets up the click, basically. So if I click the sprite is what really all of that is saying. Then if I do click the sprite, I want to update the value of t. And so we got to make sure that we set t equal to the new world.seconds. Once again, this is all just being copied from another problem that we've already done. Now, finally, we get into our logic. So if it's red, I want something to happen. And if it's not red, I want something to happen. All right. Well, if it's not red, I want it to change to red. All right. So how would I express that? Well, first of all, I need to make a variable to decide. And so I think I'm going to just call this variable red. And since we are starting with a white background, I'm going to set that variable red equal to false. Now notice this variable was set up outside the loop. This is a variable that exists before I even start going into the draw function or before I even start doing the loop. Now, if it's not red, that means red was equal to false. So how do I check for that? So I'm going to go into the control section and I'm going to pull out the if statement and I'm going to put the if statement. Actually, I think I'm going to use the if else statement. And I'm going to say if red, R-E-D. Now, if I don't put it in quotes, it's referring to this red. If red equal false. Now, here's the first thing that's very important. An equal sign means assignment. A double equal sign means equivalency. So you got to make sure that you're using the right things. Notice in here, in this menu, there is no single equal sign. You don't even have the option to assign something from this stuff. This is all comparison. If I want to compare and see if two things are the same, the comparison symbol is to use two equal signs. And so if it's red, then what I want to do is, if it's not red, if red was equal to false, then what I want to do is I want to change the background to red. So we go to drawing and we pull in background and we select the red option. And luckily there was already one right there for us. We could just use the pull down menu. Now, once I've turned it to red, that changes the condition of the variable red. The condition of the variable red should now be red is equal to true. So we'll go into variables and we'll say red is equal to true. And when you type out true and false, make sure you use all lowercase letters. And so now when it comes through, when I click it again, it's already going to detect that red is true. And so it's not going to do this. If red equals true, that means it's red, and I want to change it to white. So if it's not red, change it to red. But if it is red, change it to white. Now, how do you think I would do that? Well, I'm going to go down into the else section, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go to the background color, and I'm going to fill the background color as white. And then I'm going to go to the variable, and I'm going to change red back to false. Because once the background's white, it's not red. So the variable we're using to track red should obviously be false at that point. All right, so now when I go ahead and reset and run this, it starts out the same. And notice I can move the mouse around. Once I click, the background changes to red. And I know that'll make Dr. Gray really happy because he's a big Alabama fan. But if I go ahead and click, it's back to white. Hey, still Alabama colors, right? So this is a win-win for Dr. Gray, and it's also a win-win for our programming. Now notice I accidentally double-clicked, so it changed it to red and back to white. really fast. So you got to be careful to make sure that you're clicking really slow when you change this background. But that solves problem number 4, how to change the background when clicking on a sprite. And the hard part there was knowing how to copy and paste this old code that governed how quick you could press the button. And then the other thing is this new logic of an if-else statement and creating a variable that's either true or false. So some kids probably didn't know how to do that. You might not have known how to do that. So hopefully you can help them moving forward. Now let's take a look at problem 5. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my version history and I'm going to basically start over. So that'll wipe out everything. And then I'm going to go back in and I am going to start from scratch on problem number 5. So for problem number 5, let me put that comment in here so that we know what problem we're working on. In problem number 5, we've got 3 different images. We want the first image to appear on the screen, and then we want to be able to click the first image for the second image to appear, and then we want to be able to click the second image for the third image to appear. This one actually I thought was a little bit easier than problem number 4, because once you've clicked the sprite, you don't care what happens. So now we really don't have to worry about the world seconds to govern whether or not we can double click or triple click or quadruple click. 1 click or 20 clicks does the exact same thing. So that kind of eliminates some of the coding that we're going to have to do and some of the logic that we're going to have to do when we write this program. My solution is a little bit simpler than the solution that was given in the teacher answer document. So be aware of that, but I only put in the problems I only put in the parts for problem 5 that I think are absolutely necessary. The first thing we need to do is we need to go get those images. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do animation, and I'm going to click new animation. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for an animal. Oh, I like the cow. I'm going to look for these things that are not, they're just 1 frame animations. They're not really playing over and over again. So I think I'm going to use the cow. I'm going to go in and I'm going to use, let's get some food. What do cows like to eat? Cows like to eat carrots. And then let's go and get some obstacles, and cows don't like cactuses. So I've got cow 1, carrot 1, cactus 1. Those are my images. I pick those really quick, click, 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 and then I'm ready to move on. Now, how do I code in all of those images? How do I link those images to code? Well, if you remember from a previous lesson, all of that happens in Sprite. And basically, we need to create some variables that link to each of our things. And the direction said, let's use Sprite 1, Sprite 2, and Sprite 3. So I'm going to change Sprite to Sprite 1. And I'm going to start out by putting the cow in at 5200. Let's see what that does. And then I'm going to set the animation label for Sprite 1 equal to, and once again, I'm going to go back to animation. I'm going to go back to cow, and I'm just going to cut and paste that name. Control C, back to code, Control V. And I'm exactly sure I've got the exact right name. And then we'll go ahead and make Sprite 2. And Sprite 2 will come in at 150, a little 100 over from where the cow is. 150, 200. Sprite 2 will be the carrot. So Sprite 2, I go back to animation, I click on carrot, I highlight that name, Control C, go back to code, inside the quotes, Control V. And then finally, Sprite number 3 is going to create, I'll create this one at 250, and this will be the cactus. So I'm going to set that animation as the cactus. So I go in here and I copy and paste the cactus's name, and I go back to code, and inside the quotes, I got cactus. And then all you have to do at this point, excuse me, all you have to do at this point is to make those sprites show up. That's just the draw sprites command inside the draw function. So outside the draw function, I basically created 3 variables and assigned those variables a sprite and a starting location. So now when I hit run, they should all show up on the screen. Ooh, I've got an error here. Let me pull up this error and see what it is. So somewhere I left something as just sprite. Oh, right here. That should be not just sprite. It should be sprite 3 because I don't have sprite. All right, I'll reset and run. And sure enough, there's all my pictures. Holy cow, the cow is really big and the carrot is really small. So how can I want them all to show up on the screen, and I want it to, I'm kind of a neat freak. I want everything to have kind of a symmetrical look to it. So I'm going to do some tricks here. I'm going to show y'all some tricks you can do to fix this up. So the cow is about twice as big as what I want. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to look in these things, and I see a sprite.scale command. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this command out. Now notice once I pull it into the screen, it's actually enclosed in a little purple box. And so this sprite is going to go with sprite number 1. I'm going to put it up there. So I'm going to change that to sprite 1. And if I want its scale to be half as big, then basically that scale is 0.5. And I want to change its location. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the cow up and I'm going to center him a little bit. So to center him up, 200 has been pretty good for centering. And to move him up, I'm going to change the Y coordinate to 100. Right. Once again, the carrot was too small. So I'm going to go and pick the scale, and I'm going to change the scale of the carrot. So the carrot was sprite 2. Ooh, I set it in there, and I didn't mean to do that. So yeah, I got the little purple box, and I'll snap it in underneath. So the scale for the carrot is sprite 2. And so I'm going to do sprite 2, and I want it to be twice as big as it is. So I'm going to change its scale to equal 2. All right. I'm going to move it down and to the left some. So moving it to the left, I'll lower the X coordinate, move it down. I'll raise the Y coordinate. And then this one, I want it to be on the other side, but at the same Y level. And the cactus size to me was just right. So now let's see what I get when I run all of this stuff. Okay, once again, I've left something as sprite. Yeah. I don't know how that got in there. That doesn't need to be there. Sprite 3 set animation should be cactus 1. I think I accidentally threw the scale 2 into that block. So let's go ahead and reset and run. There we go. Now I've got all of my pictures where they want to be on the screen. Everything's about the same size. That looks pretty good to me. Now, this just displays all the sprites. So that's half the problem. The other half of the problem is we need to create situations where when we click on something, it appears. So when I click on the cow, I want the carrot to appear. When I click on the carrot, I want the cactus to appear. And so the cactus will never appear until we see the carrot. So the carrot and the cactus don't need to be there. So how do you check and see if something is going to be there or not? Well, looking down in these codes right here, I have this visible command. So remember, if I pull it over here, it's going to look like a block. And the two things that I want to make sure I can't see right off the bat are sprite 2 and sprite 3. So I'm gonna do sprite 2, and its visibility I'm going to set to false. And then I'm going to do the same thing for sprite 3. So visible, pull it in, turns to a purple block, attach it right there below all of the sprite 3 stuff. Let's put it below all the sprite 3 stuff. And I'm going to make it false as well. All right, so now when I run, oh, I didn't change it to sprite 3. I'm getting a lot of error practice here. Now when I run it, the only thing you see is the cow. However, when I click on the cow, nothing happens. So now the logic of making the other two things appear is going to go inside the draw loop. So it's just going to keep redrawing the cow over and over and over again until we change something. So now I need to go back and I need to do some if statements. So like I said, I don't care how many times the cow is clicked. So I don't have to do anything with the world.seconds because it doesn't really matter to me at all if I click it once or 300 times. I just want something to happen after the first click, and multiple clicks are not going to matter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the mouse pressed over sprite 1. So I go into here and I go down to mouse pressed over, and I change this from sprite because it doesn't know what a sprite is because I didn't make a variable for sprite to sprite 1. And if that happens, then I want to change the visibility of sprite 2. So I go down here and find the visibility command and snap that in there, relabel that from sprite to sprite 2, and now I'm going to set the visibility to true. Remember, when you're using true and false, you have to use all lowercase letters. And so now that I've locked that in there, now when I run and reset, I've got the same picture as before, but now when I click the cow, the carrot shows up. Of course, when I click the carrot, nothing happens. So what I have to do is I have to go back into the draw function, and I have to make that thing happen that I want happen. So I'm going to go back to control, and I'm going to find an if statement, and I'm going to put another if statement in there. And then I'm going to go back to the mouse pressed over, and I'm going to say now if mouse pressed over sprite 2, then I'm going to make sprite 3 visible. So now I go in and find sprite visible. Here it is. I'm having trouble finding it there. And I'm going to click it in there. Remember to change sprite to sprite 2. And we change the visibility, sprite to sprite 3. And we change the visibility of sprite 3 from false, which it was originally assigned, to true. All right. So now when I reset this and I run it, I've got the cow. I click on the cow, the carrot appears. I click on the cow again, nothing else happens. Can click in this empty space and nothing happens. But when I click on the carrot, the cactus appears. So now you've got all 3 of your sprites displayed. So this was just a little bit of practice in the logic of clicking to make things happen and what kind of coding you have to do to make the animation change and to make certain things happen. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I hope this lesson was informative. And until next time, keep on coding and keep on creating.